tutorial, we'll look at proportions in similar figures. The two figures are similar figures, meaning that they have the same shape, triangles, and their sides are proportional. Because of this, we can write and solve a proportion to determine what x is, or the missing side length. When writing our proportion, we have to identify the corresponding sides from each similar figure. 14 and 6 are corresponding sides. So that can be one of our ratios, 14 over 6. We could also write it as 6 over 14. The next set of corresponding sides is x and 2. So our second ratio can be x over 2. Because 14 from our first triangle was the numerator in our first ratio, x, because it comes from the same triangle as 14, must also be the numerator in our second ratio. Now that we have our proportions set up, we can solve for x using cross multiplication. So we will multiply 6 and x, which is 6x, and that should equal 14 times 2, which is 28. So we have our equation 6x equals 28. Now, to solve our equation 6x equals 28, we can divide each side by 6, leaving us with x equals 28 divided by 6, or 28 sixths. This simplifies to 14 thirds, which as a mixed number would be 4 and 2/3, or as a decimal would be 4 and 67 hundredths. This represents our missing side length from the first triangle. So the length of that side would be 4 and 67 hundredths feet. This was the proportion that we wrote originally to solve. We could have written this proportion a couple different ways. There is some flexibility in the way that we set up our proportion. We could have also had the proportion 14 over x equals 6 over 2. Notice in this proportion, we are comparing the lengths of each triangle within one ratio. So 14 and x come from the same triangle, and 6 and 2 come from the same triangle. What must be true when writing a proportion is that our corresponding sides, indicated in red and blue, must either be contained in the same ratio as they are in the first proportion, or they must be aligned as numerators or denominators as they are in the second proportion. Also, the triangles must be in the same ratio or aligned as numerators and denominators as well. So 14 and x have to be in the same ratio or aligned, and 6 and 2 have to be in the same ratio